Dangote is essentially a market maker. So you're defining capacity in the market. You're almost sort of shaping the market in a way. Who lifts, who gets to lead. Yeah, eventually you may start to control supplies. And now you're saying you're not just defining the market from a retail perspective. You're now looking at defining transportation and distribution in the market, where you're essentially distributing for free. And this goes back to the market maker, because if you're going to get 4,000 CNG trucks on the road, they're going to need filling stations. They're going to need mother stations. There's going to need storage. There's going to be all sorts of things. He may not run all that, but he's creating an opportunity for you and me. And if we recognize the opportunity now, we will come, and then we're creating additional jobs.
Shocking is the fact that Nigerians have still not accepted that Nigeria economically has been a little bit stable this year. You know, I'm still hearing people saying, oh, you know, you still see it everywhere. Nigeria is just terrible. Oh my God. There are things you can't explain to someone outside Nigeria. If you don't feel the traffic of when the president enters Lagos, and for some reason they just block your street. The president is still in Ikeja and you live in Lekki Phase 1, but they've blocked your street like 1 hour before.
You know, we tolerate a lot here. So I find that shocking because nobody has been able to figure out why.
I was doing this course in Imperial College, and it's international students. And you know when Portugal and Spain had the blackout?
Yeah. Oh gosh. It's like
and Armageddon. How devastating it was and how they couldn't live. And I'm thinking, it's
like Armageddon.
Do I speak? Do I know? Yeah.
Hello everyone, welcome to Drinks and Mics, brought to you by Naira. Of course, my name is Ugo Dre, and we do this every Friday, 6 p.m. on your favorite YouTube channel at Naira TV, where we bring you not just Drinks and Mics, but a whole lot of other interesting podcasts. I am super excited today because for the first time in a while, we have a lady on set. Not just a lady, hot, beautiful, intelligent, smart, everything woman.
No pressure.
No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure.
All right, so we got Rolake Akikugwe Filani. For those of you who know her, I'm sure there are plenty now. We do. Yeah. So Rolake is, people probably know her from her, you know, Rolake has done oil and gas, real estate, media,
financial services.
Damn.
Can I say something? You know, so the first time I ever heard Rolake or heard about her at all, I used to live in Abulegba, and I was going to work one morning, you know, inside the bus and everything. I used to love the BBC Business Service, the podcast. So I would download it at home and then listen to it on my way to work. And then they're going, and then we're turning to Nigeria now, and we're going to be speaking to energy analyst Rolake.
It was Akikugwe.
And you know, she just came on and she was just talking. I'm like,
with the full name.
Who is this person? I was like, now wow.
Oh my God.
But yeah, that was. I mean, the image was larger than life, as in it couldn't have been bigger.
Yeah. So what happened? What happened? That was then. The image was larger. So what about now?
You gotta watch how it's never changed. No. Let me say this. And this is something I never shared with anyone. The what it painted in my mind of who Rolake was never left me. Yeah. As a matter of fact, it had a strong influence on why I ventured into media.
Wow.
Because I'm like, if
look at that,
this Nigerian is able to be in media and then be this person, then maybe media is the pathway to where I want to go. That's why I went into media.
Glad to have inspired.
You guys heard that already. By the way, Rolake is now CEO, founder of Energy Inc.
Advisors.
Yeah, and you're going to tell us a little bit about that, though. But I mean, I really don't want to introduce them because
wow, because I've taken your Tumba title.
There's just someone more important here to introduce. But you know the usual gang. And all Dublin Green without your Tumba. He just give himself a Tumba because
he doesn't look like an Otumba.
Exactly.
He's kind of, well, in a nice way. You know, you have this very English.
Exactly. You know, that's what he is. He's a mister.
He looks like a mister. Sir.
Exactly. So, Sir Arnold Dublin Green. So, of course, we got the MAGA man in the house, Tunji Andrews. They've had a fantastic week so far. I mean, it seems like
tomorrow will be
they're having a
knows.
fantastic run so far. Anyway, good to have you here, Rolake. So just a little bit. I mean, like we said, media, finance, real estate, energy. Looks like you're back to energy.
Yeah, my first love. Back to my first love.
So what are you going to do?
All roads are always leading here. But actually, funny enough, the very first job I applied for when I finished my undergraduate degree was the Reuters graduate journalism program.
Okay.
So you've always had this?
Because in my head, I wanted to be Christian Amanpour.
Oh.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
And they rejected me. And it was so traumatic for me that I was like,
Oh, wow.
never again. But it's really funny how it's kind of come full circle
Yeah.
because, I've sort of found all the roots into media,
Yeah.
so to speak. So that's just interesting trivia. Yeah, so a bit about myself. I mean, you know me as the energy person, but I've done so many other things. I'm sort of miss multiple streams of impact. I really don't believe that you have to be one thing or just do one thing. You can find a way to connect the dots between your profession, your side hustle, whatever it is, media, and they all come together, right? It's all about impact and making things happen. So started actually working in international development, then went into consulting, risk consulting. And actually it was when I was working for risk consulting firms in the UK that the oil and gas thing
just blew up.
It grew.
Yeah.
And because 90% of my clients were MNS, international oil companies.
Yeah.
That was where I really started to get that consciousness that this industry has a lot going for it. And then, if you're a consultant, you're an analyst, whatever, they're pushing you into the media, always being called, talk about this, do this. Some refinery has been blown up in the Delta and, they need people. And that it just kind of evolved from that. And then the banks wanted that expertise. And I thought, banking sounds interesting. So just kind of followed my expertise. And I think what has really helped me knock on new doors from an industry perspective is really just pushing that spirit of excellence. So if I'm doing something, I'm doing it really well.
Really well.
Yeah.
And so it's given me confidence in my ability to be adaptable across so many different things. That's kind of the abridged version.
What was that experience like, though, coming back here and settling in the hustle and bustle of Lagos?
Yeah. So I came back 11 years ago. I remember the 5th of May, 2014.
That date, man.
Yes.
So what made you
And that
come
was
back?
the last year that we really experienced.
No, I
made you
remember that
come
date
back?
for several reasons. So
Okay.
I came back and then within 1 week I started work. Bad idea. Don't do that. Settling. So for me, it was many things. First of all, it was actually opportunity because, when you develop a career early on and you're kind of known as a talking shop, there's a bit of an insecurity that develops. So I'd left a career as an oil and gas research analyst for a Pan-African bank in London. Are we allowed to mention companies here?
Yeah.
Of course,
Sure.
sure. Name names.
So I was working for ETI as I'd helped them build their Pan-African research team. And I just got interested in transactions and deals. And I went to my bosses at ETI. I was hired by Arnold Ekpe and I said, I want to go into investment banking. This is so cool. And he's like, you don't have a finance background, banking background. He's like, just be patient, wait a bit. And then FBN Capital came knocking. They'd sort of seen me as an expert. So it was my industry knowledge and expertise that got me into investment banking, not because I had an investment banking background.
Oh, I see.
And so it's a really interesting turn in my career. That was how I then went into investment banking. And of course, I had to move to Nigeria. Honestly, I tell people that if I was making that decision 2 years ago, I probably wouldn't have come back. Right?
Why?
I mean, I put this. Should I say it as
Please
it
say
is?
it, yeah.
Come on, 2014. Where was the Naira to the dollar in my year?
We're close to like 140 now, 150.
In fact, there was an article I did on LinkedIn recently where I said from pounds to Naira, 10 years of navigating. And let me crack you a funny story. So when I was applying for my executive MBA and they asked you to put your salary, I was already in Nigeria here. They asked me to put my salary down in my local currency. And convert it to dollars. I did that. I knew they'll have. So I sent it to them. And the admin lady called me back and said, did you miss a couple of zeros? I'm serious. No, this is a true story.
No kidding.
No, she did. Because in her head,
I
know this laughing. I know this laughing. No. You feel me, right? You get it.
the pain.
Because in her head, executive MBAs, she couldn't conceive how I was going to support myself through 18 months of this global executive MBA, traveling for modules, paying flights, with this salary. So just to give you an idea, that Nigeria journey was tough.
And sorry to cut you off, and it's a harsh reminder of how poor or we are versus our global peers.
Yes.
Like people that are on the same level
that we're
as
at the
us
same
globally,
level with. Yes.
we are.
We're
it's terrible.
And we're probably doing more in terms of work.
Yeah,
Possibly, yeah.
but just pairing us with everyone else that's like us. It's painful.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so I know that pain.
Yeah. So anyway, well, look, we're here, right? And it's much more than just about the Benjis,
about
right?
the income.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Energy Inc., what do you guys do now?
So what I've done with Energy Inc. is to say, look, I've built up this sort of body of knowledge. I built up a fantastic network across the continent in the oil and gas sector and the energy sector across the value chain. People know me, people recognize me. It's time to really leverage that in a way that gives me several things. It gives me ownership, right? Because there's nothing like owning your own thing. But it also gives me flexibility. And because I've always been, I struggle to be put in a box, right? Even if I'm going to take a corporate role, it has to have a really entrepreneurial feel. I have to be able to explore, adapt. I can't just be sitting somewhere crunching numbers, right? And for me, that platform just does that. And, you know, since I started, I've actually seen quite a bit of traction, and I'm wondering why I didn't start this journey earlier. You know, so it's really about just exploring that entrepreneurship journey, tapping into your networks, you know, really monetizing your leverage in the industry, and hopefully we're seeing the fruits.
You guys watch out for Rolake.
So we do advisory, consulting, capital raising, capital mobilization for the industry, essentially. Yeah.
So basically, if you want to open your own Dangote refinery and you don't have money,
well, I don't know if it's just that simple like ABC, but yeah, that's the general idea.
Exactly.
That's the general idea. Why you had to use Dangote refinery as an example?
Are you seeing a lot of deals as we're seeing exits?
You're jumping. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Sorry.
By the way, there was another energy analyst that followed in. Rolake inspired a lot of people.
I think I know who you mean. Dolapo.
Yes.
Yeah. So he worked at My Team at Ecobank.
And the Nigerian himself.
He's retired.
Fantastic guy. He worked at my team. He was one of the first hires when I started the Ecobank energy research team. Yeah, that was how we sort of grew together in that space.
Nice.
Yeah,
great guy. Dude.
Absolutely. He spoke very highly of you.
All right, guys. So we will dive right straight into discussions. What a year it's been so far. First half of the year is gone already. I can't even believe it. Wow. Yeah. We're just talking about dirty December, and now it's like it's summer. I don't know what we'll call summer now, whether it's clean summer or dirty summer. But anyway, so I just want us to look back at the last 6 months, and I want to start with you. Like, I mean, you've seen 6 months. Let's start geopolitically, of course, and then we'll come down to Nigeria. So what have you seen, or what did you see over the last 6 months that, I mean, gladdened you, that you said, okay, well, let's start with the good things first?
Okay. I mean, closer to home, I was just talking to someone about Ghana. Because, I mean, yeah, we can go global, but I think that's probably a success story that's on, well, maybe success is extreme, but that's a story that's improving. It's a success story.
It's a turnaround.
There's been quite a turnaround. And I think a lot of people are not paying enough attention to it, actually, because Mahama obviously is quite well known, and given where the previous administration left the economy, it's been quite a remarkable turnaround, to be honest. Look at the inflation trend in Ghana. I think they're down to like 18%.
But it has been trending downwards.
It has been trending downwards, but they're now like at a 3-year low. See the CD appreciation. At one time, the worst performing currency against the dollar. Now the best performing currency. And of course, gold has done fantastically well globally. That's helping Ghana. Cocoa has also done really well. They've just done a restructuring on their bond. You know, they obviously had this 2022 thing. I mean, that's still ongoing. But I think the picture for me there is is that actually you can turn this thing around. I'm not going to start comparing Ghana to Nigeria, but the point is with some focus,
it's doable.
It's doable with political will. Actually, they're creating what is potentially a massive success story in the next 18 to 24 months. And I think Ghana, for me, is something that I really loved this year, and hopefully they continue to do that. What else have I loved this year? It's hard to love a lot globally, to be honest. But actually, this may be counterintuitive. In some ways, I like the fact that everybody is now being forced to think internally, right? The US pulled back in aid. I know that's a bit counterintuitive.
It really isn't, though.
It really isn't, because you're thinking the same way, right?
Yeah.
Because now everybody's thinking, nothing falls on your lap easily, right?
Yeah.
The whole aid thing, the whole support, US aid, obviously, it's caused a lot of traumatic events around the world. Don't get me wrong. And the reason I say so is because I sit on the board of an international humanitarian organization, and we had to lay off over 1,000 people.
Wow.
Yes, across the organization, globally. It does interventions in conflict zones for children. So there's that side of it which has been difficult, but it's actually even forcing them to look at new models of funding, innovative funding that's not reliant on sovereign aid, right? And I think we're seeing that. And so even our multilateral institutions in Africa, everybody's being forced to rethink it. Everybody's approaching their budgets differently. So in some ways, I've loved that, because actually it's about time. We all need to take back our sovereignty, our ownership around economic growth and development. So that's also being...
Sorry, before you go to the next love it, because this is really love it, hate it. And so there was something you said on... that just concluded Afrexim summit.
Yeah.
They give you the mic and you said something about rating agencies, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
You were like, look, it's probably about time,
Yeah.
Africa as a country internally starts to create its own
ratings.
Its own maybe, rating
Metrics.
agency or whatever. So could you maybe throw more light on that? Within this context of
apparently earlier this year, the African Union, and they do this African peer review mechanism thing. In fact, they had huge issues with Fitch, Moody's, and all these guys. And those guys have actually got it wrong, not just in Africa, even globally. And their thinking was like, the way the data for a lot of these ratings are collected is so divorced and so removed from a lot of the realities on the ground, right? Not just in terms of the sovereign ratings, but the ratings for the financial institutions. And so they're thinking, why not we create an African credit ratings agencies that doesn't replace them, but is complementary to them, so that when investors are looking at these countries, right, they can take it holistically. So that's the whole idea. Obviously, with any type of Pan-African initiative, it can be subject to sort of political maneuvering and all of that. But the thinking and principle behind it is good. And of course, what really has brought it to light is when Fitch came out with the ratings of Afreximbank. This one really pains me. And the reason it really pained me is that Afreximbank is one of the last remaining multilateral finance institutions that still does oil and gas, right? Of course, we know what has happened in oil and gas globally in terms of capital. And so they have a huge oil and gas portfolio. There were issues around their reporting around non-performing loans. But they actually downgraded Afrexim to one level above junk status.
Incredible.
And it's okay, there's a very technical issue called preferred creditor status. I don't know how much technicality you want to go into, but preferred creditor status essentially means that there's some types of creditors that should not take a haircut or suffer from restructuring from sovereigns. But they didn't know where to put Afrexim. Is it a development bank? Is it a commercial bank? So they just kind of came out with this broad sweep, and which meant the lens through which they saw Afrexim was like, look, you are
a commercial bank.
Well, yes. But look at some of the deals that Afrexim does, the principle and the ethos behind Afrexim. Now, I don't want to get into the semantics of Afrexim, but the point is, it's another example of why we really need to re-examine how we can create our own structures. It doesn't absolve us of governance issues, because that's the flip side of it. Like, Afrexim was reporting, I think, around 2-point-something% NPL. Fitch was saying is like 7%. That's a huge gap. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? So that for me was also interesting, which is why I brought up that particular issue. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, when I heard you, it equipped me as well, because I'm like, okay, we've we all also know some of the challenges, the world had with Fitch, Moody's, and a lot of these credit rating agencies several years ago. They also had to, basically restructure. Now, it looks like we're now seeing a lot of, institutions in Africa also feeling like, perhaps you don't really know our own internal complexities.
Yeah.
And some
How
of the
does
benchmark
Fitch
they are using is
report
different.
FAC allocation?
Fitch doesn't
They
check
have
back
boots on the ground. What's their own
maybe
fact
they do,
allocation though?
Well, I mean, they tend to do country ratings and
I'm sure
stuff
they
like
will
that.
look
Anyway,
at that,
so
but I don't know, analysts on the
But
ground or
that's a good question,
something.
though. So how many boots on ground do they have?
There's a model they will use what we call stringers, because I worked for an international consulting firm that was doing research. So we subcontract out some of the research to stringers, local stringers, or people who, and then you pull all of that together. But it may mean maybe they travel for 2 weeks at a time to a country, but being on the ground is not the same.
Have you ever been on the side of seeing how those stringers work? Now, this is not to say anything wrong about stringers across the continent. I have done some work like that before, and you do realize that a lot of the times it's subjective. So you're trying to portray that you have access to as much data as possible because you want to be able to prove to the agency that you have that data. But the truth is you may really not have it, and you have to rely on third-party data or something you gather. So sometimes the stringers are not as strong.
They're not as
How do you check
strong.
the integrity of the data?
To be fair, for the ratings agencies, some of them have local subsidiaries, right? And when I was in banking, they would come on visits, would meet in the boardrooms. They do sort of 1 hour questioning, asking
Local
you questions.
subsidiaries or local affiliates?
Local affiliates. And so actually you would have executive directors in there, you'd have people from research teams, you have people from different departments, risk, compliance, giving feedback, and they take notes and go away. So I think they're trying to build a comprehensive picture. But you and I know that not living and working in the system and the feel you get, the nuance is still different from doing research, and so you miss out on all those nuances.
Which is
that
why
are
I
so
said
important.
FAC allocation is also like when the president comes to Lagos. Those little things, they are things you can't explain to someone outside Nigeria.
Right.
If you don't feel the traffic of when the president enters Lagos, and for some reason they just block your street, the president is still in Ikeja, and you live in Lekki Phase 1, but they've blocked your street like 1 hour before. How do you explain things like that? And it's those little nuances about Nigeria's economy, the banking space, that you can't really translate in a 1 hour board meeting with somebody that doesn't have context really to begin with, and is just asking from the basis of their own context, and the question will be forget what you said. Whatever I'm hearing will be interpreted from my own
experiences.
My own experiences. So I'm going to write down what I thought you said, and that is a problem. So, and me, I've been saying it since maybe like 2014, not just. I wasn't even talking about rating agencies. I was talking about the whole African government system as a whole. We need to basically, rewrite how we look at relationship with the rest of the world. Trade, not aid, have our own stance about every single thing, and basically have our own metrics for what they rate us with. So you call us a third world country. We should also have our own ratings for what a first world country is to begin with.
We should rate them? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying
Let's move. I don't want us to make this a rating segment. I mean, we could argue this from now to tomorrow, because some people would also tell you, well, I mean, if I'm the one giving you the money, then you got to use my rating agency.
But it applies to so many. It applies to how we even finance.
Which is why I say don't even collect their money.
Oh, no. Anyway,
but that's the dream, though, right?
So what's in your hate column? Your hate column. What have you hated?
Oh, hate. That's a tough one. Because I see opportunity in everything.
So if there's no hate, then there's no hate.
That's a tough one. Well, actually, to be honest, the trade wars have been annoying, especially if you're an analyst who's always trying to read markets. Because there was a time when being an analyst was so much easier than now. You were clear about the drivers for everything. So you knew that if war broke out in Israel, Iran, oil prices were moving in a certain direction, right?
And
now,
it wasn't happening.
I feel feel for the people who do this work now because you
It's like predictions are out of the window,
most
man.
times when you're trying to analyze, you just sound stupid because you're like, okay, which is it? So I think the world is now so fragmented that, it's really tough when people ask you about countries or regions or things. It's really tough to really pinpoint things down to one single thing. So I think the trade wars have been a bit annoying and irritating. And also because we know they're highly politicized, right? The real issues are all about integration. If you look at Africa into regional trade, and it's getting subsumed in what Trump is doing, what China is doing. So I hate that stuff because it's sort of blurring the narrative. What else have I really hated globally? I would say really I think we're not doing so well in terms of economic growth on the continent. I think the pace of growth that demands inclusive trickle-down, development.
Yeah, effect. Yeah.
It's a struggle.
It's a struggle.
It's a
difficult to
struggle.
find. Yeah.
And if you listen to economists, they talk about you needing certain levels of double-digit growth. Right,
sort of
successfully
pull
over
people from
time to
poverty.
really pull people from poverty. We're not seeing that pace. And I think it feels like then all the economic policies we're pursuing at a macro level, what will they come to eventually? So I think that is a big challenge. And then you can turn that into the energy poverty side. We're still struggling on that front because of the funding issue. So I think that's also a challenge. What else would I hate?
Let's move to shocking. What's shocking? What was it that was shocking to you last 6 months?
Actually, this is really interesting. Ethiopia liberalizing its banking sector.
Was that shocking?
Well,
wasn't that expected?
It was a good shock.
Yeah.
It was a good shock, but I think Ethiopia has had one of the most restrictive banking sector policies on the continent. There's a certain cultural and social ethos in that country that for those of us who had tried to study that market, break into advise investors on that market in the past, it was like, these guys are just never going to change. But also it's shocking because Ethiopia is one of the countries that has they have a strong Pan-Africanist, although that sounds contradictory, but they have a very strong, I know it does, because if you're closing up your markets, technically, but their leaders have always been all about the black race, that kind of message.
Funny enough, they were the only country that wasn't colonized. Anyway.
Yeah. So that's also giving them, and then here you have it. They started this process that's now led to, and especially for their banks. Right? Commercial Bank of Ethiopia has always been the big ones, and maybe they have a few other ones, and then these minnows that are more like credit institutions. And now they open up the space. And I think for me, that's shocking because who would have thought? They've opened up like a country of 120 million, global bankers. You have access to a market of Africa's second largest in terms of population. So I think for me, that's been a bit shocking, but it's a welcome shock, right? If you like. So I think that's great. What else has been shocking? That is I would say Trump and Musk.
Oh,
the level of
the love-hate relationship.
No, but you guys, let's be honest. No, I know people have joked about this thing, but a world leader. I mean, we followed Trump social, we see all the tweets. But each time I think like this thing is not going to get any worse, something just comes out and you're actually scratching your head. I grew up idolizing America. But it's true. I'm not lying.
Tunji has schooled us.
But I know it may sound a bit, funny to those listening or watching. But the truth is, if you just see how far, I don't want to say how far that country has fallen, how far it has come, maybe the not so great direction. It is shocking that the leader of one of the world's most powerful economies is engaging on that level. Right. And then, so on the one hand, you have these two big personalities slugging it out over EVs and expenditure and tariffs or whatever. And then he's also trying to deal with things like trade tariffs. And it's like a major anomaly. And people I find that shocking. Right. I find that really shocking in a way. So yeah, those would be some of my big ones.
I'm going to come to you in a bit because I know you're itching to respond because I feel shocking will be good and will be lovely to just call them. But I don't know, let's come to you then.
Okay.
Love it, hate it, shocking. One each.
What have I loved? One?
Globally though, we're talking global now.
Oh, wow.
What have you loved?
Just one thing?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. Okay.
I know,
if I had to choose one, it'll be Gold. I'm going to talk about gold. I mean, we talked about it, and for me, because gold represents the structural change that we see coming. We talked about
structural change.
Structural change. So for me, in 2022, when Russia-Ukraine started, the central banks saw America sanction Russian central bank assets. So we saw global central banks diversifying, and they were diversifying out of US treasuries into precious metals. So gold has done exceptionally well this year. Gold, other precious metals, platinum, palladium, maybe silver. So for me, if I had to choose one good thing for me, one thing I love is gold.
Hate?
Okay.
Hate is tough. Hate, I'll come to Nigeria. I think hate for me is... hate for me is the fact that we got our fiscal budget wrong. Where we have a 2 million barrels per day when we knew that, we all know, and they know that 2 million barrels per day is unrealistic. And then we called an oil at $75. I think that we all knew that oil would trade lower this year because of global consumer demand being lower. So if I have to hate that, I'll hate. If I have to hate something, I'll hate that. If I have to pick one. Shocking is the Naira resilience. War, really? Trade tension, geopolitical madness. The Naira has strengthened for 3% or so
this
year. For me, that's shocking. It's good.
I mean, 3% from the year low though, because it closed about 155.
Yeah. But I mean, regardless, when it started at 1.5 something, 1.6 something, most of us thought that by now it'd be 1.8, 1.9. Because we saw everything coming, right? We knew that the dollar had to be weak, but we also knew that, especially when trade tension started, oil volatility that we've seen. We saw oil start the year at $80. Down to 65, 59. And the Naira is still, I think that's shocking to everyone.
Let it be known that on this show, I did say that I was looking at a stronger Naira. Tunji and Arnold said they were looking at weaker Naira. Let's move to Tunji. Love it, hate it, shocking.
So love it. I love the reconstruction of the world order. I absolutely love it. I
told you.
I've always been heavy on the fact that, countries are over-reliant on a certain block of leaders who really do not lead them, by the way, but we've handed power to them so much. If I were to hate something, it's the fact that we're not stepping up quickly enough to take our place in the new reconstruction of the world.
Who is the winner?
I'm talking about Nigeria. I'm talking about Nigeria. And this is from me just, because over the last couple of weeks, I've been seeing us making moves. There was a talk about trying to get a loan. And then all of a sudden, it's just evolved into politics. So we're trying to prepare for the next election. And I'm like, no, guys, we're claiming land. we should be claiming territories, And if I hate anything, it's the fact that Nigeria is Nigeria. When there's so much to be gained, we're talking about this politics and the next presidential election. So for me, shocking is the fact that Nigerians have still not accepted that Nigeria economically has been a little bit stable this year. I'm still hearing people saying, you still see it everywhere. Nigeria is just terrible. Oh my God. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's not as bad as it was last year. In terms of prices rising and things like that. And it's also feeding into the perception of a lot of people. There's so many, this year has been filled with opportunities, as in it's been shocking the amount of opportunities that have been slapping us in the face.
Yeah, he's having a good year.
I agree.
Awesome.
Yes, I am. I mean, the year
crypto is good. Trump is winning.
Everything is good again.
Everybody's good.
Pempe is well right there.
By the way, thank you to everybody that reached out. You guys crashed our servers twice again this week. Thank you very much. As in, thank you.
This is really good.
Left, right, center.
Thank you. But I'm saying that economically, it's not as bad as it was last year. And sometimes you really have to acknowledge that for you to be able to see the opportunities. But if you keep dwelling in, things are just bad, it just keeps bringing you now. So that's shocking for me.
All right. Okay. I want us to move straight into what we're looking at for the rest of the year. But I want you to touch on your own love, hate and shock in Nigeria.
Okay, so for the rest of the year, I am actually really excited about. Maybe I'm getting into this early, the energy space. I was telling somebody in Abuja a few days ago, because I, apart from African, I stayed for the Nigeria oil and gas and, met all the big wigs.
Some deals have been signed.
I also had the opportunity to interview the GMD of NNPC, right, on stage. But I was telling people that if we can't get it right with this crop of people, right?
We can never get it right again.
We're
toast.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about that. I think that space is exciting. And Nigeria is actually really resilient.
I swear down.
Financially, people saying there's no money, there's no this, there's no that. I'm struggling with execution capacity. I'm being serious. I was telling somebody as a new entrepreneur in this space, I have to slow down on business development because, and maybe we can talk about that when we talk about young professionals and, getting ahead, because there is so much to do, right? So energy is exciting. I think the reforms have been fantastic. Like, honestly, the reforms,
economic reforms so far.
The economic reforms have been good for stabilization. The reforms in the oil and gas sector have been much needed, long overdue. So I think that's going to help. I hope we go the trajectory of what Ghana is doing. I think we have some serious structural issues in our economy that means that transmission mechanism, when we sort of trigger monetary policy, we expect to see it takes a bit longer for Nigeria, right? So, but I think come Q3, Q4, we will really start. So you're feeling the reprieve, but I think come Q3, Q4, maybe Q4 is always tricky because of the December factor. But I think the man on the street maybe we'll start to see some reprieve. I do think so on the inflation front. If we can get some of these things right. So I'm really excited for that as well. So those are some of the things that I'm hating for the rest of the year.
No, what do you hate? Yeah. No. What have you hated for the first half of the year?
Oh, for the first half of the year.
Locally.
Locally, geez. It's really around this kind of dichotomy between everything that is about stabilizing the economy and what you see every day.
Huge difference, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know.
So you can understand the forex policy,
so
policy,
with my mind,
policy,
you have that intellect, you're exposed, you're in that environment, but every day you're like, is it a population factor? Is it just a disconnect in governance at the local level? So you see that every day. So that your excitement that you get when you go to all these big conferences and you hear somebody speak and we're doing this and we're seeing this and the industry veterans are telling you we love the reform of the tax policy. Actually, tax. Sorry. I was going to say tax reform. I forgot to mention
Is that what you hate or you love?
No, love, big
Absolutely.
time. In fact, I think that could be, that's more 2026.
Yeah.
But we're on the path.
It's a huge game changer though.
It's a huge game changer. So I love that. But so it's still that disconnect between economic policy making and the realities on the ground. And how we make that kind of transition or break that gulf is something that I'm still struggling with. In reality. So in my consciousness, when I'm doing business, my consciousness is how can I be part of the solution that helps to bridge that gap, right? That's kind of what I'm thinking. So
It was absolutely shocking to you.
Absolutely shocking to me.
Perhaps in a good way or in a bad way?
Shocking to me is, I think, it's just the fact, it goes back to this idea of our resilience, right? The fact that we can be dealt the biggest blow.
I mean, like you had first subsidy removal, exchange rate depreciation, this massive
and
electricity price increases, and then people are still
around the timing of the policies, and so this thing about whether we just have this innate thing as Nigerians that we just keep ticking and going. But we enjoy life. We always believe that tomorrow will be better. So somehow we want to pursue and be part of that dream. I find that shocking because in any other country, look at what's happening in the UK. Look at Europe.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We tolerate a lot. Here, I think we do.
They can't stomach
Absolutely.
a tenth
No,
of
no,
what we
no.
stomach.
The level of tolerance is really low. For them, the threshold is extremely low. And you can't even compare the welfare benefits in some of those societies to what Nigerians get here.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that shocking because nobody has been able to figure out why we're like that. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's just to, I've got this funny story. So I was doing this course in Imperial College, and it's international students. And when Portugal and Spain had the blackout,
Yeah.
I had
Oh
some
gosh.
classmates,
It's like
and they were talking about
Armageddon.
how devastating it was and how they couldn't live. And I'm thinking,
It's like Armageddon.
do I speak? Do I know? So resilience.
Yeah.
We're extremely resilient.
All right,
Extremely resilient.
let me come to you now. I mean, what's your outlook for the next 6 months? I mean, we've seen a very good, well, to a large extent, macro indicator wise,
Yeah.
not a bad, first 6 months across board. Equities not doing 16+%.
Absolutely.
A lot of commercial papers being sold at 20%. Exchange rate doing pretty well as
Surprising,
as well.
shockingly
Oil
well.
price, despite the volatility, still
Yeah.
came out not looking that bad for us.
Yeah.
Fiscal buffers maybe eating up well. So what do you expect the second half of the year?
So, I mean, just to go back a little bit, I want to speak on resilience. Our stock market has been extremely resilient as well. Our banks, I mean, they threw windfall tax, they threw reform, recapitalization, they threw forbearance. And GTCO was 13 Naira last year and it's 18 Naira today.
Incredible.
So our stock market is also resilient. Even our bond markets. I mean, I've always said I love our assets. I don't like our currency, right? So even if you mark to market, if you bought a 10-year local bond in January, you mark to market it to today, you would have made money. Eurobond's the same thing. So I don't see why the market doesn't continue to go up because the stocks are still cheap. If you compare our banks to global peers, if you compare our consumer names to global peers, Nigerian breweries, if you compare our cements to global peers, we're still cheap. I don't think we get that rush in FPI as the year goes, as the year ends, maybe comes next year. I know that the MSCI index, the Morgan Stanley Composite Index, we're thinking of adding there's a conversation of adding our stock market to them. I don't think that happens this year, but I still think we still get some nice flow and nice returns equity market. So I think equity is still good. I think NPL starts to reduce probably by Q4.
Mm-hmm.
They start to probably reduce NPL. This is central bank. But I think that global issues will still hold. So our central bank will still be they'll be careful. So we might not see a huge 200 basis points reduction in NPL, but we see something 50 to 100 basis
What
points.
sort of headwinds do you see?
Headwinds.
Because there would always be headwinds.
I'm still worried about global impact to our assets and our currency. Because my worry sometimes, if there's bad news and an asset price still goes up, then perhaps the market is underpricing the risk. The risk of this bad news, right? So we still have trade wars, we still have everything going on. So my worry is that global issues hasn't been priced in yet to our currency. So I think global issues might be a headwind.
Or has it been priced in?
Tunji?
And they just think it's not.
Yeah, but you can't not. Let's use one factor of oil.
Okay.
So if oil was at $80 and currency was at 1.5,
Yeah.
oil is at $69 and the currency has to move.
No. What would change the price of oil is the question.
What would change the price of oil?
Uh-huh.
What would make it go higher or lower?
Yeah.
Same issues, right?
What are those issues?
Same issues.
What are those issues?
There's several of them. Geopolitical.
If it comes back, because it hasn't been clear.
Because the narrative has always been from one lens previously,
Which is
if something in the Middle East happens, oil prices will go
but
bonkers
we're not seeing
everywhere.
that anymore.
The reason is simple. So, for instance, Iran, Israel, right?
Yeah.
Everybody kind of just realized, wait. If this thing does happen, Saudi Arabia can still cover
Step
us,
in.
right?
Yeah.
It's not that bad, right?
But it was fair that Iran could probably maybe throw a missile at Saudi Arabia and then you could just start an entire...
Why would they trade missile at Saudi Arabia to do
but
what?
even though global demand has not been that great, so that was also a drag on prices.
Also, there's even the bigger part of the fact that even in Iran itself, they couldn't afford not to sell it.
Yeah, Iran needs
Yeah.
oil.
So, I think the thing is, the reality of the world right now doesn't afford us doesn't give us the luxury to jump into conclusions.
Absolutely.
We step back and you know that thing they say about when you, instead of getting angry, count from 1 to 7 or something like that before you react. So I think analysts across the world have started doing this. Like, relax. It's not that bad. So, for instance, the Iran-Israel thing, it could have. We did think oil price, and it did go to $80 at some point.
Yeah,
but everybody kind of like, nah, it's not that.
Yeah,
bad.
because we knew there would be a de-escalation.
Yeah.
I don't think Iran would have been ready for war, but yeah.
So what's yours?
My
Tailwinds, headwinds, next 6 months.
Nigeria locally.
Yeah, of course, anywhere.
So the thing I did not expect to start seeing was the drive towards elections.
So you think that's a risk, headwind?
I think so. I think it's going to take our eyes off the ball in terms of reform and actually focusing on what we should focus on. All this talk of a new coalition to come and, it's really, the noise shouldn't be as loud as it is, but it's beginning to stir a few feathers. And, that consistent reform that we're seeing at some point, it's now those ones that we saw from last year or early this year, the one in NNPC, the oil and gas sector, the one with tax. Those are the ones we are still carrying forth. We should be seeing new ones on a consistent basis. It's like it's the consistency of this economic reforms that actually takes us to the promised land. It's just not 1 or 2. It should be like 10, 12, We're not seeing new ones. I hope that I'm wrong, but if we start to focus on politics from now till the end of the year, we might start to lose some of the gains from what we have experienced beginning of the year.
All right. Well, okay. What are the tailwinds?
Tailwinds, headwinds. Actually, when Arnold was speaking, I just realized, so the Trump big bill, the
Big,
expenditure
beautiful
debt issue, I think I see a potential risk there from an interest rate perspective. I know Trump, there's the Fed could actually look to try and curb some of the impact on that, because this is really expansionist, right? So what that would mean for our markets here then is something to look out for. You already talked about the Naira. So I think that's something just to watch out for. It's too early to sort of gauge what the impact of that move would be. But with the tension we see between Trump and Powell and all of that, I know Trump is always about keeping interest rates, at bay, but the Fed may have no choice but to start to look at
sticky.
Yeah.
Or probably increase it.
Probably maybe towards the tail end of the year. Let's see, right? What the
increase it.
Not now. But I'm
basically
wondering what the
reacting to
impact of this debt, fiscal deficit in the US is, and this expansionist drive. So that I'm just like, let's see where we go with that, because that could be a major unpredictability. Just something to look out for. I definitely have to agree with you on the political environment, because I think what you need is, the people joke about the fact that 4 years is not enough to sort of consolidate policy gains. And we seem to have this policy cycle where at 18 months, we do something really radical. We don't wait for everything takes longer to really consolidate than most markets because of the way Nigeria's structure is. So I feel that we need another solid 18 months of just focusing, bedding down some of these things for it to work. But I think the tax bill will probably help to dilute the effect of that politicking, because it provides relief across so many fronts. So maybe things like those structural elements, we need more of that, right? Tax is a major structural driver of the economy in terms of income, in terms of output, so many other things. So I think for me, that could be a concern, although maybe I'm not as concerned as you are. So those would be sort of two things I would point out. The impact of the first one I said on the Naira, because we might see rates go up in the US, then the dollar is going to move northbound, right? So that again is something to look out for. I don't think any major geopolitical events would affect any of the key drivers that we're looking at. The world is so fragmented right now. Yeah.
All right, great. So I mean, if I'm to chime in as well, I think for me, maybe start with headwinds. I think my own concerns are banks. Not that I feel banks had any structural risk, but in terms of profitability for a lot of banks, I think will be a little dampened this year. And so for
Would
investors,
that be a problem?
I mean, dividend-wise, for investors looking at the same sort of robust dividend that we had last year, you probably would not see it. Now, this is nothing new because I think we experienced this, was it the year after COVID or so, where we had banks also struggle to pay dividend. And then the next year, they were back up. So I kind of feel that might just be some kind of headwind for investors. In terms of tailwinds or headwinds as well, little struggle to see what sort of new policies that can come up over the next 6 months that could perhaps maybe drive the economy or not just like give us that sort of push
catalyst
that we want. It kind of looks like everything that would have been done has already been done in the first half of the year. And so been thinking, okay, so what else? What are the massive projects that we're expecting? It kind of looks like it's just been the Lagos-Calabar highway that has just been the only significant project.
I've been hearing rumors though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else is
I have
happening.
one I'll talk about a bit later in
nice
the energy
sector.
sector.
So mine is for the next 6 months. Not sure I see any, but there are a lot of tailwinds though. A lot of tailwinds. I think that that trickle down effect that we're looking for. I think that we will start to see it towards the end of the year. I suspect prices will stabilize. It's already stabilizing. And even if it's not stabilizing, it's no longer at the same pace that it was rising before. I'm thinking, believing that interest rates at some point will start to, probably slow down for the, later half of the year. Probably not decelerate fast enough to encourage borrowing, right? The kind of borrowing that the manufacturing sector really needs. So, but I think you'd see that bit of deceleration happen just as inflation numbers start to come down. Very bullish as well on GDP numbers that might come out here anytime soon. That's what I heard. I don't know what soon. I'll be hearing soon for a bit, but someone told me soon. So that as well, I think, could be a major driver for foreign investment. I kind of feel that's one bit of macro indicator that some people are waiting to see for certain decisions to be made about Nigeria. So for me, I kind of think more tailwinds than headwinds though. Yeah.
If anybody is watching, please follow Ghana's PR. It's fantastic. Let's hear about it. Ghana's PR
but you got to back
been-
PR with numbers though.
Yeah, but they've been good.
So that even when their numbers, before
PR
the
is
numbers,
important. I
before
agree.
the numbers became good,
Yeah.
the PR has been spectacular. I remember, was it like 2014, 2015, when their inflation was skyrocketing, the PR was still something about the most stable democracy in Africa. The PR in Ghana is spectacular. It helps the case for economic
And
growth.
they also had that big year of return thing that they did that also helped.
Yeah.
So if
So
you're around the
Africa's
president and the government in Nigeria, please.
I mean, some people say there's actually a lot of PR around. I don't think I've seen this level of PR for any government before in Nigeria. To be honest, I think we've seen a lot of PR. So Tunji, I think they're doing a lot of PR. So let's just switch.
I've not seen, Shao.
You haven't seen. You haven't been online lately. You've been avoiding. You're avoiding your online friends for obvious reasons. So let's just switch quickly to energy, oil and gas, particularly. Okay, a lot of deals last year. I mean, perhaps maybe oil and gas majors divesting from onshore investments, giving it to Nigerians to manage or to buy. This is not the first time we've seen this happen. Happened, I think, 2013, 2014. Orlando ConocoPhillips as an example. But looks like a lot of lessons have been learned since then. Maybe we'll have stronger locals buying into some of these onshore assets, and it's looking like for some of us, we're hoping that this could lead to higher crude oil production output. Because to me, if we're not seeing higher crude oil production output, then it's just a few people making money. So just, what's your view on some of the divestments you've seen so far and what you're expecting over the next, few months from what you're hearing?
Yeah, so for me, I think actually since I've been looking at this sector, these last sort of 2 years have been the first time I've seen these many deals in such a short space of time. And then the deals being transferred to locals of these types of assets, right? So for me, that was another step change in the industry. So, and if you go back to 2022, at the peak of Delta craziness, there was a time actually Nigeria's production almost halved. Like there was a time it was like 600,000 barrels or something crazy. So these deals, first of all, have raised expectations, right? These assets are changing hands. These are not small boys' assets.
Yeah.
Right? These are big assets.
Yeah.
ExxonMobil being the Seplat deal being one of the most prolific. The expectation is that these deals need to get us to that 2 million barrels a day,
Exactly.
right? But 2 million barrels is meant to be sustained, not peak.
Not peak.
That's what the
we should be looking
government-
at 2.5.
That's what the government has in mind. Now, where are we now? And if we continue at this rate, are we going to get to 2 million barrels at the end of the year? It's a bit tricky. It may not happen.
Is there a chance we can get there?
See, they're doing all the right things. And one of the biggest indicators of what I've seen, although it doesn't necessarily translate, is that NNPC, I think, it started releasing these monthly reports, which the new GCO was talking about, is that it has now 100% pipeline availability. Even international operators would envy that. How they've achieved that, whether it's through drones or breakthrough technology, or
When you
just
say
that,
100% pipeline availability,
that
what
all
does that
their
mean? Because
pipelines are
working.
available
Available.
and working.
So we're no longer
it
having-
doesn't translate.
what's that word? Sorry,
Evacuation, integrity.
there's something that
Well, evacuation.
Samson said here one day. Evacuation, integrity.
disorders,
Whatever.
Trust Samson
Which-
Esemide. That guy. Trust him to come up with a word like that.
Which is basically another word for, organized
Just-
crime. So, I mean,
But it doesn't mean
are we
that.
saying no more oil theft?
No,
what
of
you're
course
saying?
we're not saying no more
Okay.
oil theft. But it just means that from an infrastructure perspective, they're easing the bottlenecks. They're trying to do everything within their power to make oil flow from the wells to the terminals. There are other factors, obviously, that affect your ability to produce and evacuate. But I think it means they're sending the right signals. Now, in terms of the asset divestments, the biggest issue for local companies has always been capital. Capital.
Oh, not capacity.
Well, there's
Oh,
capacity
capital,
as well, but
capital. Let me know about capital.
we've come a long way for capacity.
Yeah,
Local
yeah,
content,
yeah.
Nigeria is like a global leader. So I'm not even worried about capacity. But it's always been about capital and how much you need to develop or bring incremental production. But I think all of these guys, is it Renaissance, African Energy, is it Oando, is it Seplat, is it, I don't want to mention some of the other names, but I think they're up to the task. Right, I have no doubt about that. There's some other guys who own marginal fields that will have to relinquish because there's no way those guys are going to find capital. But I think in terms of getting us to 2 million barrels in the next 18 months, I think we're up to the task.
Okay.
I don't even think that's a necessarily ambitious enough
How are
target.
we going to get there? Because we're looking for an extra 300,000.
We're looking for an
Is it from
extra,
existing-
but we're looking for an extra 3,000. But since 2023, when Tinubu came into power, we've actually added. We've added
Okay.
about 300,000
Yeah, from our
barrels.
1.4.
We've added
We're
about
averaging
300,000
Okay.
But
barrels.
this 1.7, does it include condensates?
Yes, it does include condensates. And so one of the things actually they need to do is to separate the data so we have that true picture of crude oil production. But I think 2 million barrels is achievable in the next 18 months. Now, there's worries around the elections and what will happen if that election now spills over into other types of activity, right, in specific regions. But I think we're up to the task. I think the capital issue remains. I think we need to be a bit creative and resourceful as to how we do that. But I'm very bullish about this sector also because I think we can see an additional FID on some of the big deep water wells. We saw Bonga. I think has it been a year now since that first FID in 10 years?
But does that capital come in though?
It's coming in. See, there's a myth that somehow nobody's funding oil and gas anymore.
Yeah.
It's not true.
But
With the
we're not seeing
exception
it
of
in
the
the numbers.
DFIs, with the exception of development finance institutions, of course, the only person, like I said, Afrexim Bank, right? But a lot of global commercial banks, even in North America and Europe, some of them are still doing oil and gas. Sovereign wealth funds from some markets are still doing
In
oil
Nigeria?
and gas. Funding oil and gas in Nigeria.
So where is that data? Because we don't see it in our capital
In fact,
importation
funny
data.
enough, we are actually, Energy Inc. Advisor is actually doing a report that will be asked on the year on the capital flows to oil and gas in Nigeria. It's because I think that's, and it's creating this perception that there's no capital coming in.
Yeah.
International oil traders are doing prepayment for offtake. They're funding and advancing money to operators and developers. There are private credit funds that are springing up all over the place. So I don't know, nobody's funding oil and gas. Nobody's doing oil and gas. A lot of it has to do with structure, how you're structuring the deals and what markets you're going to. And I think in these 4 years of Trump, America, UX, Exim Bank, all of these guys they're coming back to fund oil and gas. So, and then look, I'm speaking to a local entity that's looking at an equity fund to pool our pension funds into the oil and gas market. They're not the only ones. They're not the only ones. There's another fund, there's private credit that's coming back. There are people who are doing oil and gas. There's another Nigeria oil and gas fund that's being developed by a group of Americans and locals. So the point I make, look, if you create 10 billion Naira funds, 10 billion Naira funds,
It will be taken.
It will be taken up in this market.
So are these funds going to be listed on the exchange, or are they debt?
Well, some of them should be. It would make sense. You need both equity and debt, right? Depending on what stage you are. Obviously, I think with some of the debt funds, probably a bit more tax efficient. If you're an investor and you want those flows and distributions more regularly, yeah.
So
I think so.
Are these funds Nigeria-focused oil and gas funds?
Nigeria-focused oil and gas funds, yes. It's the most prolific market, right? In terms of subsurface risk, is basically almost zero. What you need to worry about is evacuation and what happens. So I think oil and gas is still key. I think they will achieve 2 million barrels a day if they continue at this pace and they do the right thing.
When this year, next year?
You want me to be called on that?
Yeah.
I think we can hit 2 million barrels at some point this year, but whether we sustain it, I think it's possible. I don't think it's impossible.
Without investments.
I think hitting it first is
and this is including condensate.
We're not talking about new investments, right?
Yes.
We're talking about unlocking
What we already have.
where we have
have.
bottlenecks. Yes. I think we can. Absolutely. I think we can, right?
agree.
Yeah, I think that's possible. And then the 3 million barrels target they have by 2030, of course, that depends. Of course, OPEC is a bit of a constraint, but I'm sure the big boys will negotiate at that level. Yeah.
All right, let's talk downstream as well. We've seen Dangote Refinery basically come in and essentially, some people will say monopolize, but seize that market, currently in competition with a lot of other downstream players who are also pushing back. I mean, I think their soundbite is, look, you can't just have one major player in the market. You got to have a whole lot of other people in the market. So just to get your views on that. We had someone here last week who also, had his own view, but what's your view on what you're seeing as regards Dangote Refinery, particularly with petroleum products, and how the current NNPC views this? I mean, we all knew how the former NNPC viewed the Dangote Refinery. So how does the current one view it? Are they more sympathetic to him, or do they believe that we should have maybe, level playing field in quote?
Yeah.
level playing field with who now?
I don't know.
Level playing field, yeah. That's a good one.
With oil marketers, exactly.
I think, look, I mean, I like what Dangote is doing. He's been very transformational. And I did this thing recently that people have different reasons. I compare him to Rockefeller and all the amazing things he's doing to wake everybody up, to wake everybody up in the industry. The difference is Rockefeller's empire was eventually broken up, right? Because he just started to control everything. And what Dangote is doing, it feels like Dangote is literally borrowing a leaf out of that book. Because, in fact, the only thing Dangote has not quite done yet is upstream oil and gas production, although there's a JV somewhere with a company, right? So they are actually trying to secure barrels beyond just buying from others. But it's a necessity. What he's doing, he's positioned himself to fill a need in a market that has struggled, where the state-owned entity has not been able to plug. Now, NNPC is talking about 500,000 barrels a day from its refineries by 2030. That's a tall order. And the reason I think it's an even taller order, not that I think it's impossible, because look at what happened with retail prices recently. When Dangote moved their prices, then NNPC followed. So NNPC is not yet in full control of its
Of
own
value
value
chain.
chain. And I think therein lies the problem, because Dangote is essentially a market maker now. So you're defining capacity in the market. You're almost sort of shaping the market in a way. Who lifts, who gets to lead. Yeah, eventually you may start to control supplies. And now you're saying you're not just defining the market from a retail perspective. You're now looking at defining transportation and distribution in the market, where you're essentially distributing for free, right? Have you seen that flyer?
Yeah.
That you're distributing for free. What happens to others who are in the distribution space? Gain. So now the question is, because he's come under so much criticism and he has this heart for this country where, okay, they say I'm doing this, okay, let me serve my people and offer this for free. It's actually in a way then pushing others out of the market.
Business,
So I think the government needs to look at from the point of view is that we need to work with Dangote. We need to sit down and talk to this guy. Let's see how we actually build an entire ecosystem, whether it's for gas, for petrol, or whatever, to advance Nigeria forward. So, I mean, the talk of monopoly is neither here nor there. It's monopoly by necessity. It's not because he just wants to control everything.
Like someone said, survival. Essentially.
It's essentially survival, but not just for him, for Nigerians. It's for Nigerians, essentially. That's what it means. Our pump prices have come down. Right? Because now we have a formidable player in the market who's driving that competition, helping to drive that competition.
Tunji, what's your take? Because I see you, I see you stroking your beards. It's something where, like I said, that kind of struck me is the government needs to get involved at some point, but you've seen them try to get involved over the last few months. We saw what happened with the previous NNPC and Dangote. So is there or are there vested interest that is, somewhere along the line pulling strings that is allowing Dangote to come out like this? Because how would you just come out and want to do
strings?
When you say vested interest pulling strings,
so for example,
I think he's a businessman.
why does he have to invest in? Is it 4,000 trucks?
Why not?
Okay.
Why not?
So
Okay,
why?
no.
If you had a very good value chain, right? You've had people in the distribution space.
Let me tell you something. People will accuse, you see, to the layman on the street, you tell me that I'm now controlling the market for fuel, that I'm not doing this. I then tell you, okay, you say I'm controlling, I'm going to help you get these things to the market so that by the time it gets to the pump, your price is not impacted, right? Because then you say it's because of Dangote. Now I'm providing a solution that gets you the goods to the market at a much cheaper and more efficient rate. So it's
But
like
wasn't he doing that because the distributors themselves weren't coming to his... They weren't coming to load. So that was why he decided to get into that space as well.
So I like to say there's nothing new under the sun. And Rolake did speak about Rockefeller. Again,
He's going to go to the man who speaks. The man who built America. No, the man who built America.
The man who built America.
Yeah, I knew that was
Rockefeller was basically into drilling oil, and then he was mostly known for selling kerosene at the time. But he needed to get his kerosene from one part of America to another part of America. And then there were people who were building rail.
Yeah.
He basically funded a lot of the rail building because he was
relying on them.
Exactly. He needed to get his kerosene from one place to another. And at some point, he couldn't fund the rail. It now became, okay, on every gallon of kerosene you take, you get this cut, So they structured it into the deal. My point is that conversation of my kerosene needs to get from this part of America to another part of America built a lot of the real infrastructure that started America. Based off, I want to sell my market to another part of America. And even buying 4,000 trucks is not even efficient enough in my mind. I'm thinking he needs to get rail, because the idea...
Why is it not efficient?
No, I mean, it's trucks now.
It's trucks.
Yeah,
but that's moved from rail to piping.
That's my point.
Yeah, so it's
my
one
point
level.
is that it's one level, right? It's necessity. What we need to understand as Nigerians is that government needs to take its hand out of business and just regulate, right? Let the people who have the capacity to get capital, who have the interest in building sectors do what they need to do. And your job as government is to just create the regulation and the enabling environment for them to thrive. If, for instance, Dangote feels, for whatever reason, I need to buy 10,000 more trucks to be able to get my goods from point A to point B, is because it is necessary for his business. Will it have a long-term effect? And somebody even did some calculation, and it blew my mind. It was like those 4,000 trucks directly translate into 16,000 jobs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was going to say, what do you mean? Then I thought about it, like, that's just 4 per truck, like driver, bus,
then shifts and all that.
You get 16,000 real life jobs just from that infrastructure built alone. Now, in the future, will he see that the trucks are inefficient? Yes. Will he start thinking, do I work with somebody to build rail? Do I pipe?
But he did that with cement, though.
My point.
Yeah. But I think it goes beyond that. And this goes back to the market maker, because if you're going to get 4,000 CNG trucks on the road, they're going to need filling stations. They're going to need mother stations. There's going to need storage. There's going to be all sorts of things. He may not run all that, but he's creating an opportunity for you and me. And if we recognize the opportunity now, we will come, and then we're creating additional jobs, right? So it goes back to the regulations that it's not that this monopoly, it's actually not a pure monopoly. He's actually, he's a catalyzer. He's a catalyst, right? And the sooner the regulators, the government, everybody sees that this is actually an opportunity. How can we work together to make these things work? But I think actually CNG right now is more efficient than diesel, right? Once you get past the technology and the initial investment, actually it makes a lot of sense from a pricing perspective.
By the way, from that's just the documentary I said you should watch. You would realize that some of the biggest banks across America were born from that particular era, just funding the building of those transactions, and that is what made them the banks they are today. So this could create different kinds of industries from just the fact that this person has created this and is thinking of how to efficiently get it across to the market, and is thinking of how to plug things along the line. So I think the government should look for more people like this. It's unfortunate that he did it in cement. He's done it in sugar.
Do you say unfortunate?
No, it's
as in the same person.
The same person. Okay, not the fact of doing it.
So it could have been it could have been Ugo J in cement.
So we need more Dangote.
Exactly. And
absolutely.
The government can create them. Is my point.
All right. Well, okay. So let's move to Midstream. I mean, I've been hearing for years. I'm sure you guys have heard that we probably have more gas than crude. So, but we haven't really seen the same level of, I don't know whether to call it investment or the same level of impact that Upstream and Downstream has had on the Nigerian polity as a whole. You know, when you look at gas, gas is not powering electricity as much as we want. They're saying we're flowing a lot of our gas. I think LNG is probably the only major player, in that space.
Yeah, you have like Greenville LNG and a few others that are doing pretty neat. Yeah.
And I also hear gas prices are also still highly regulated. So what are you hearing in that space? Well,
no, gas prices are not still highly regulated, at least on paper. But I think the midstream part is the biggest thing that could unlock that is what they've done now is to try and unlock the stranded gas, right? The gas that is stranded, that is not tied to oil production, which then usually requires significant capex investment. Like it's probably about 2 or 3 times. So
this is not the gas that you're flaring?
Yeah.
That's the gas that
even though that one is a problem, we'll come to that later. But so that has been one of the big, and then deep water gas. So it's like you're adding 2 layers on it. You have stranded gas and you have gas in the deep water. So you're talking about huge capex requirements that has not had an ecosystem built around it, right? Unlike oil, which is a global market, gas is highly regionalized. So in terms of all the infrastructure, they've tried to do several things. If we look back, of course, the decade of gas, we're about 2 years away or 3-4 years away from the expiry of that. Then they had the Nigeria Gas Transportation Network Code. Then we had the Gas Master Plan. Then the next level was to break down the Ministry of Petroleum Resources into gas focus. Now, my only challenge has been around the cohesion of all of those things. We haven't delivered the results. We have a 12 billion cubic feet target by 2030. I will, however, say that I think the biggest game changer in the coming 6 months will be AKK. because for the first time, they've actually laid the pipes to cross the River Niger. So they're almost at the end point now. That's transporting gas up
to the north. Yeah.
right? And then OB3 is sort of south. So I think for me, we're getting there gradually. But it's a hard slog. It is a really, really hard slog because we haven't really figured out what to do with to monetize the gas, right? And then the gas deals that are really finding traction are the ones that are done on a totally liberalized basis, where I come as a buyer, the one that's going to industrials, the ones that have clear commercial contracts where the buyer and the seller can negotiate freely. There are no hindrances. There are no hidden costs. Those projects, I think, will take off. And so me, I think I'm relatively optimistic, cautiously optimistic about gas, but I think it requires a lot more investment.
But can we get to a point where it competes with oil in terms of revenue generation in Nigeria? Because when the Russian-Ukraine war started, we all realized how important gas was because gas prices went through the roof and Europe shut down. So
and then we're also seeing Europe thinking about looking for alternatives other than Russia.
And we have all these gas pipeline projects, but this is also a timing issue because time to market is a major challenge. Right? Yeah. And so you think about what Qatar and China have done. They've gone in, they've negotiated 22, 26-year contracts. It's incredible that you still have that in this market. Now,
so that can help you even raise capital if you want to.
That can help you because obviously you have your offtake. But that happened in a window when the world really needed it. So Nigeria keeps getting into the cycle of...
we come to the table at the wrong time.
We come to the table at the wrong time. But then an opportunity opens up. We're not ready. We're not ready. So, but I think we're facing another opportunity because of Trump, right? And because there's a lot of buyers that are looking for new markets, right? So we need to find a way to get the gas to them. But you have to first, charity begins at home. Create the gas markets locally and become a reliable supplier. And that has always been the big challenge with Nigeria is the reliability of our supplies and the clarity around the regulation. If we become a reliable supplier and the infrastructure is built, people will come to a market.
Why can't you be a reliable supplier if you don't have infrastructure?
Well, that's the point. That's the point I'm making, that you need the infrastructure to be a reliable supplier because people need to be able to trust your source of gas, right, to international markets. Yeah.
AKA, we need another Dangote.
In gas.
Because I think the first thing is, these things don't just happen. You don't just get the big deal on day one. There needs to be some smaller, like incremental effect. For instance, the entire country in itself, a large portion of it relies on CNG, mostly not produced locally, right? I might be wrong. I don't know about the industry that much, but I feel it is brought in from outside. If somehow we're able to, capture the local market into some sort of efficient delivery system where we know we produce gas locally, we distribute it to industries and even to homes, right? Retail, proper retail, and there is a business plan market around this. It starts from there. That's stage one before you then think, okay, we now want to sell to Ghana, for instance, or maybe we want to sell to Qatar or somewhere.
Yeah, but Tunji, see, of the 100% of gas that's produced in Nigeria, about 70% of it comes to the local market. Of the 70%, let's say the 70% is 100%. 90% of it goes to power. That is a fundamental problem.
But it's not even enough.
It's not even enough. Yeah, but it's even a fundamental problem, right? Because your main off-taker for gas in the country is a power sector, which also has its challenges. You can't run a gas industry based on almost a single off-taker model. Not because that's what you want. It's just the way the market has evolved. And we know the liquidity challenges across the entire value chain. I mean, some of it is improving, but you know better than most about this, right? That's one of the things we need to fix. That's one of the needs. Because the off-take options need to diversify.
Somebody needs to create that channel.
But the off-take options also depends on the virtual pipelines, the actual infrastructure, the pipelines, and all of that goes with it. So in a sense, yes, we need a Dangote, but we need the government to stand behind some of these guys, right? And open the way for them to go in. And they're doing it. I mentioned Greenville LNG. There are a lot of companies I'm advising a company that's doing gas storage. So actually the market is evolving. The market is developing and people are doing deals one-on-one. The big piece we've missed is how to make sure that is secure and stable. How to get the stranded gas out of the ground. And we have legislation for deep water gas now for PSC, production sharing contract gas, that will make that more possible. And I've always said that if you're coming into the oil and gas sector today and you want to become an entrepreneur, you need to look at gas distribution as a key, because the incentives now, the tax breaks for LPG distribution, clean cooking, all of that is there. We just need the capital to make it happen.
So let me ask you, so I don't really know much about gas in terms of Nigeria. What's the data in terms of, I know oil, exploration. So with gas, how much gas do we have?
About 600 TCF.
And what is that
reserves?
Like versus, reserve. What is that like versus other countries like Angola?
So I think Mozambique, some of the newer countries like Mozambique and Tanzania. Mozambique has about 200 TCF.
Okay.
Right. And then you have Egypt, Algeria, and a few other places. So Nigeria is at probably the largest reserves-wise, not production.
Okay.
Because we need to then translate that, but reserves-wise,
Okay.
So we literally can feed
of course.
the entire sub-region. Yeah.
All right, guys.
Is unexplored.
We are almost running out of time. So, but I want us to get into the next topic quickly, and that's the future of work. Yeah.
I just take it as it comes. I take it as it comes. I take it as it comes.
Yeah. I want to talk about future of work. Yeah. So, and I really like this topic because I'm very curious to know, because we're like an entrepreneur, Tunji is as well.
Entrepreneur now. Before I was 9 to 5 hours.
Yes, exactly. So even Arnold, from your own experience, there's been a lot said about the impact of COVID on work, especially post-COVID. You're seeing organizations ditch some of the so-called New World Order that thought about work from home. You're seeing that nobody's doing that anymore. No more DEI for some organizations. And then you're also having to deal with different generation of employees, with different kind of exposure. So how do you view work now, especially as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Sitting on this side, sitting on this side of the pond gives you a new appreciation for companies and businesses and executives, because I'm seeing firsthand just how difficult it is to recruit good talent and live with that fear that somebody will come and poach them. But also the Gen Z work ethic thing is very real. I think it's just a complete mindset change. It's a complete step change. It's a completely different generation. It's a completely different era in the way we view work. We've moved on from what my dad used to complain about every time I'd move from 3 years at this company. I'm moving again. I spent 30 years with NBC. But that's the reality, right? So I think we have to find a way to adapt. And I think because there's so much exposure to a lot of opportunities to make money, if you're employing someone today, you know that in one of my JDs for a senior associate, I actually put in the JD that you don't have to work for me full time.
Really?
Yes. Because that is the only chance that I feel that if I'm going to find somebody good who can do corporate finance or financial modeling, I have to be willing to allow them to even have a 9 to 5. First of all, I have a virtual working model. So except we need to sort of do an initial kickoff meeting, we don't need to see each other. So I know very well that even if you tell me that you're just working for me, you're not just working for me. So I lead with the fact that I recognize the fact that you're doing many things, but you just need to deliver. So that is the mindset you need to approach. That is how, as an entrepreneur, you want to run a sustainable business, you need to approach it with.
So how do you get I don't know what to call it, maybe loyalty is the wrong word. How do you get their attention? How do you get them to deliver for you? I mean, if you know that, okay, look, you've got an employee, you've told him, look, I know you're not working for me alone. It's probably working for 4 or 5 people.
Yeah.
So how do you then get them to focus on delivering?
Well, for me, it's really about just the incentives, right? It's really about paying you what I think you're worth and recognizing the fact that you bring so much more than your technical ability to the table, right? And it's just being open and having those conversations. I think the reason why people kind of show out or rebel against some of these institutional structures is a lack of recognition from the people who will power in organizations that the world has changed. And so a lot of time in banks can be some of the worst culprits. I mean, I've worked for 2 or 3 banks, so I know it can be because employees, they want to explore, they want access, they want to tap into new opportunities. They can't be working for you, solely for you, 9 to 5 and tap into new opportunities. I had a big conversation with my dad earlier today about the fact that, Dad, you know, if you want to create true wealth in this generation, your 9 to 5 only
It's just not
Can't
enough.
give you that.
may not. And I know, and he was like, Rolake, that seems like a bad narrative. I was like, but Dad, things have evolved. Just look at currency. Look at what has happened to Naira. You mean to tell me that if I'm working in this economy and I want to survive and I want to build a house, I want to do things, that I don't need an alternative source of income that's FX generating? How am I going to get that if I work for a big Nigerian
And it's really not
multinational?
strange because even abroad, you see people working 2 jobs, 3 jobs.
Yeah, they do. So I think we just need to just embrace this mindset. Even the tools we used to work, the opportunities we give our employees. I allow my employees build your brand. Right? Don't just say you're working for Rolake and that is it. Build your brand. What is it that you love to do? How do you want to express yourself? That's some of the mindset we need to start thinking about.
Tunji, how do you see this? What's your own experience?
So I generally believe that the context of money is never really a motivational factor. You can never pay them enough. But what I have learned that seems to excite is the opportunity to build something either that's never been built before or they've never built before. So tasking them in a creative area where they are building for you, but also learning new skills as they do that. Because they realize that as they're doing this, they're evolving their own personal portfolio. I mean, we've seen situations where we're trying to speak to somebody, especially when it's tech related, where the CV comes with, I work for 1, 2, 3.
So you're going to be number 4.
Exactly.
As a factor of why you should hire me, look at the 3 I'm already working for. You know.
That's so funny. And they're bold about it. It's
That's
like
very
just
bold.
there.
What I've learned is the more dynamic it is about what you're building, and especially if it has real world implications, not just making money is always great. Everybody is excited about making money, but when it has like a very something that they can be proud of, that we built this, it really excites them. And
So I'm hearing you guys say this thing. I want to come to you a little bit, but let me ask. So are we saying now that the concept of 9 to 5 is dead or is dying or is evolving? Well, I mean, what are you saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I just think they're alternatives.
So how do you get your employee to work with you 9 to 5 and with Arnold 9 to 5 2G 9 to 5?
Well, but that's
Like,
not how they're working. You and I know that that's not how it works, right? I see time. It's like a spectrum, right? I'm allocating tasks. It's like the traditional portfolio career.
Okay.
It's about deliverables.
Okay.
It's about deliverables. How you choose to deliver is completely up to you. If you want to deliver at 12 to 2, so long as you said you deliver at 6 a.m., deliver for me at 6 a.m. So, and I think, but it doesn't take away from the principle of a 9 to 5, because I think there are other skills young people and Gen Zs can gain by being in that discipline and structure of a 9 to 5 and collaborating with others. Because there's also the psychological and social side about people not kind of interacting at what it takes to work in the team, what it takes to have hierarchy that you're reporting. So all of those things, those are traditional values that are still very important. But I think it's really looking at it from a basket point of view. And the truth is, in my work, I see myself as a model of what is possible around this. The more you deliver, the more you're then able to negotiate your work structure, right? And, look, I've been doing media for like the last 2 years, and people always ask me, okay, you're in 9 to 5, but you're still doing all right.
How did you do it?
How did you have that conversation?
Yeah.
When I need to deliver, I deliver.
Yeah.
So that when it then comes to exploring those other passions that I'm interested in, then it's like I've invested social capital.
I leave that as well.
Yeah. So
I did that as well.
Until
I did that. I did
There's
that
a
for years.
developer I have that doesn't reply to messages except it's 2 a.m. No, I'm not serious. I'm not joking. As
Clearly,
in,
you're
the person,
still
You don't need to
it's 2 a.m. So the person must, as in, and it's from 12 till about 4. The person is sending messages back and forth, and I'm like, I'm sleeping.
Maybe he's in Canada.
No, the person is in Lagos here. As in,
wow.
that's just the
So it slips
person's
through the
life.
How does that work for you then? How, like, because at some point you guys would need to, like, conversation needs to happen.
At first
so
it was frustrating, but then I kind of understood that this is the way this person works.
Yeah.
And if you try, and we did try a lot. HR tried to force the person into office, wrote letters, and we just realized this is not working. This is not working.
and the person was delivering though, because for you to still want to retain the person, so you know the person had talent.
The person will come to work and will deliver at 4 a.m. So yeah, like, so what's the point? Just leave this person. And it might be the fact that the daytime is for job A and job B, and our own time is that 12 to 4. As long as the person is delivering, I don't have issues. And I think so. There's a developer we have, fantastic guy. When he tells me I will not be available and this doesn't come with like prior. This doesn't come with writing letter to HR. He just tells you I'm not going to be available for the next 3 days. I'm like, no problem, because when he's available, he's available.
Yeah.
Do you get? So when he tells me I'm not going to, don't contact me for 3 days, I'm like, nah, no problem.
All right,
Just let us know where you're back.
What's your own experience? And and what do you value? So there are some employers who value, you know what, just be coming to work, even if you're not delivering, right? Or even if you're not providing results. And there are some, like, probably just rely on Google's OKR, which is key results. That's why I really don't care where you are, but just giving key results. So to you, what do you value?
So, I mean, first of all, I think being in the financial services, there's something about people in the financial services that enjoy work. We like to work. So I've never really had...
You guys make the money.
Yeah, but I've never really had, even personally, right? So even when I started off in London, I'm trading Kenya and I'm trading Egypt. So I'm at work on Sunday. I'm working Sunday to Friday. I happily worked 6 days a week because I'm trading the Egyptian markets on Sundays, and I felt like no one else in the West was in the office on Sunday. So I'm in the office, I'm ahead of everyone else. And then I'm trading Kenya, so I have to be in the office for 4:30 a.m. when the Kenyan equity markets will be open. And I find the same with the team that I work with. We trade the US markets. So US markets are open to 9 p.m. So guys are more than happy. They're working from home. Some might stay in the office, but maybe I just have an amazing team. But we're more than happy to just work whenever we have to. But I'm big on deliverables. You can, as much as I'm still getting my head around working from home, because I like to be around minds. I like to talk ideas face to face. I'm not really a fan of teams. I'm not a big meetings guy. I have my meetings standing up. It's coming to the office. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? What do you think? What do you not think? Okay, cool. You know what to do now. Go ahead and execute. But I realized on this continent, we like meetings. We have meetings about meetings.
Man.
So I'm still getting my head around so many meetings. But for me, it's deliverables because, you report your income every week. So how much have you made every Friday? How much have you made this month? How much did you make last quarter? So it's deliverables. So as long as you deliver, I'm fine. You can wake up at 4 a.m. You can wake, but the market has a structure. The market has a time. So you need to be in front of your desk, looking at market action, looking at price action. So because of markets open, you already have a strict timing, but you can work from anywhere and deliver.
Interesting to get your views. How do you see work as an entrepreneur or as an employee? How do you see this balance between delivering and working multiple jobs. Rolake, let me just switch a little bit to women in business as well. I don't think I have seen an era, particularly in the financial services space. I don't think I've seen this much female CEOs before, and it's quite pleasing to see that, and what is even more pleasing is that they're actually all doing well, and they are, at the forefront of basically driving growth.
Yeah, what did you expect?
So they say female portfolio managers are better than male portfolio managers.
Yeah.
And if you look at if you look at performance over a certain period.
Are you sure? Is there any data backing that? Or is that what they say?
There's supposed to be data.
That's what they say. There's supposed to be
I haven't looked at the data.
So what does this mean for the generation coming up, and then just your views as well? So are we seeing younger women now going into tech, or are they more going into financial services, or there's a lot of people that you mentor. So where do you think their mind space is at?
Yeah, look, I think there's the gender thing and there's the generational thing, and then there's an intersection, right? Because it's so depending on who you're speaking to, I always say that the financial services thing should not become a veil. Because we have 26% female CEOs or something. It's actually, the numbers are incredible. But that is the female CEOs. Where it really hits the road for me is what's happening at middle management.
Middle management.
Because that is the pipeline. We have to give it to Sanusi and all the stuff that they did. And I think a lot of other industries should try and replicate that. But it's the pipeline that is the concern for me, that when this generation of female CEOs move on, retire.
So who's going to come? So what's stopping them though? So is it that
We've
they're
talked
not
about
getting
these
employed,
things for many years. If
or they're not getting promoted?
No,
what's the issue?
I'm sure if you ask anybody here, when you get CVs, even now when I'm getting CVs, women always outnumber men when I'm getting CVs. But in financial services, something happens in middle management. We call it the cliff. Women fall off. It's just...
Is it life choices? They get pregnant, they get married?
It's all that. No, but that it's okay. Don't be sorry. It's the reality. So that's a big part of the story.
So that's a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, but a lot of women come back to the workplace, but you then find that they don't stay, right? And there are reasons for it. I remember when I had my son, and I was at FBN Capital, and I came back to the workplace, and within 3 months I was gone, because it's such a life-altering experience. And I think there are many workplaces that have not understood how to reorientate women back into the workplace after you've gone through such a transformational challenge. But I had other reasons for leaving. I think the point I'm trying to make is that companies need to do more to retain women, because it's such a difference.
Like what?
Yeah, because surely with flexi working and working from home.
Well, it's flexi working, but it's also the psychology of the workplace. And I always say that. So I'm a member of WIMBIZ, and we did something called the Gender Equity Scorecard. How well you're doing on equity. And how well you're doing on equity is not just about representation. It's also about microaggressions. It's also about... Yeah. I mean, this is the nuance of gender in the workplace. Yeah. It's also about mansplaining. It's also about accountability. It's also about escalating conflict in the workplace. The nuances of being a woman in the workplace in Nigeria, that we need to understand. There's so much more. It's also about confidence building post-maternity. It's about the fact that if you look at the statistics around how many women get promoted in the same year they went away to have a baby, all of those issues matter. And sometimes leadership doesn't always understand that nuance. They just say, but you have a woman on the board now, but you have 2 women on the board. We can't, but we paid them maternity leave. It doesn't stop at that. It's so much more than the numbers. But look, it doesn't mean that we haven't seen progress. There is progress, and we need more role models. We need more women to show it's possible. And we need more women to support women.
And we also need more women to be out there, women like you in public speaking.
Which is why I'm very big on visibility. Because I tell people I'm not just doing it for myself. Because every time a young woman comes to me and says, can you mentor me? It's because she's seen me do this. And she thinks, this is possible. I want to speak like you. I want to be somewhere like you. And then I show her the reality of what it takes to get, and hopefully help train and coach her. But we also need to make leadership more accountable. What are you doing in your space to pull up other women? But without ignoring the competency issue, right? You need to know your onions. In fact, you need to know your onions doubly, right? And also, we need to deal with the perception issues. If a woman is in a senior position, she got there 9 times out of 10 because she's competent and she puts in the work.
Yeah.
Right? So the narratives are important. Very, very important.
Can I ask a question or make a statement? And I don't want it to come across controversial, but forgive me if it does. But the culture here is it tends to be still women stay home, men go to work to a degree. Doesn't that also affect, or does that also affect the...
It's changing these days, though.
But it's still...
Okay, so let me give you a practical example with the practicality of this.
Yeah.
In Nigerian companies, how many days did your former employer give for paternity leave?
It was 4 days or so.
Why?
Because I'm not the one who had the baby. That's the pressure.
Yeah, but guess what, right? They gave the man 4 days paternity leave because they believe that's all he needs to be at home when his wife has just had a baby. Whereas if they saw it as marriage is a true partnership, why do you give the woman 3 months off and the man gets 4? So actually, inadvertently, the companies are the ones who are...
Okay.
And I'm not saying they should change it to 3 months. Because, in Nigeria... But in many other countries, they might give the man almost as much. Because actually, it helps to relieve the woman. Right? And so this is part of... You need to think outside the box.
But can work from home solve that, though? Like, if you have a wife that just had the baby, then... I guess maybe compulsory or, you would be allowed to
work from home actually is a fantastic thing. This thing is really important because your well-being at home or in family is so key. One of the things I enjoy about running my own business now is that when my son, the 6-year-old, gets back from school,
you're there.
When I was at work, he's in bed by the time I go home.
But as you expand and your business grows,
so exactly.
How do you deal with that?
But also, if you have influence and leverage, it's really funny the way the world works. Because when you start off really junior, you don't have much leverage and influence. But as you evolve in through the ranks, you can actually call the shots a lot more. But it's also about putting structure in place, right? Putting structure in the place and having that support system is absolutely key. But it also has to start in our companies, in our workspaces. I mean, think about a Gen Z young woman now. Seeing all she's seeing with her aunties and her mothers, will she want to put herself through working for 12 years in a big multinational somewhere? But some people are thinking outside the box. I heard the story at a conference where all the women screamed in the audience, where this multinational HR lady was talking about the fact that for their female employees who've just had babies and come back to the workplace and they send them abroad, they actually pay for an au pair nanny. So let's say I go for a conference in Malta to speak on oil and gas, and I had my baby 6 months ago and I'm back at work and I need to take my child with me. They will pay for childcare in the country so that I can take it. And everybody was screaming and shouting because this thing has never been done in Nigeria. But we need that sort of progressiveness. We don't need a situation where you call me and I'm trying to express milk. I've just come back to the workplace and you tell me to go and use some dingy room that used to be a storage cupboard. Make it purpose-built. Show that I belong in that space. All of these things add up and it makes me think, actually, you know what? I can't really do this. I need to exit this workspace. So, it's complex, but we're getting there.
I mean, that's why we're having this conversation, because these are sort of things that need to happen. And I'm happy for the first time I'm seeing Tunja and Arnold really
pay attention.
Just for the first time.
We gotta go talk.
Please talk. We want the feedback.
I think one of the things I also was thinking is, as much as empathetic as you probably are, a lot of these experiences are not experiences you have firsthand. I mean, you probably have seen your wife go through it, or somebody close to you go through pregnancy and things like that. And no matter how close you are and how supportive you are, they are not experiences you live firsthand. So you can do as much as you possibly can to be able to direct the kind of environment, but that would go to some level to look like mansplaining in terms of creation. So it does help, and it's the conversation of women supporting women, because it's really a woman that has experienced it, that knows the full ramifications of the needs and can help advise how we create that kind of environment. Because as you were speaking through it, some things were opening to my mind, and I was like, that's actually true. I mean, that I should have seen that long ago. But, but it's because it's not my lived experience. It's not something I have experienced firsthand, and I can't assume I understand how it feels. So it does help with that. But I do also realize that in some organizations we've also had, it's the Nigerian thing. Are you the first person to have a child? What's your own? What do you want? Will you? When I was having my children, my first child.
We get that a lot in my day. You put the baby on that table and you continue your work.
I still remember
my children
one of my first bosses. In fact, she left work today and she had a baby the next day, so she walked in. So I still have that in my mind. So you can actually walk in.
But the flip of this is that there's a lot women can also do to get ahead legitimately, because I was thinking of the story I heard about the solar engineer where she was going to climb up, and one of the female bosses was like, no, take it easy. No, you don't need to climb up like the others.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but she insisted that, look, if I don't do this, I'm not going to get the experience. So whilst you're trying to be nice to me, because you think I have a lower threshold, you're depriving me of an opportunity to experience that. So it's a fine balancing act, right?
It's a choice thing at the end of the day. I mean, you've got to be able to give people a choice while also trying to help, at the same time. All right, guys, we're close to the end of the show. It's been an enthralling one. So we get to the buy, sell, or hold section. I want to flip buy, sell, or hold a little bit.
Okay.
What are we buying, selling, or hold?
Buy basically is yes, you support. Sell is no.
Okay.
And then hold is
I don't have to
neutral.
give a reason.
Yeah, you don't have to. You can, you don't have to. It's up to you. Hold is in neutral. And then Tunji has this buy, sellish. I don't know what
buy-ish, hold.
I don't know what that
Hold
means.
is sell.
It just has to be all those twisting things or whatever. Yeah. So I want to start with Tunji though. Let me put him on the spot before I come to you, because I want him to be like, please, the camera, focus on him. So there's always been this argument that it's a man's world.
Oh gosh.
So I want to know whether it is a man's world from your perspective. Buy, sell, or hold, and be very careful how you answer, because your wife and your daughter might be watching. But be honest.
I'm even glad that you put that perspective. I don't think so.
You don't think it's a man's? What was it?
Are you buying or selling?
So
when
your
Tunji wants to
world.
come on, when he wants to,
You buy if you think so, right?
Yeah, you buy it. It's a man's world. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a sellish hold.
You have changed.
I don't want to waste where people stands.
I'm a sellish hold. Because you just mentioned my daughter. My daughter it's ridiculous, as in all the boundaries I have in the house, she breaks them down with a very straight face. Like, nobody should touch that. And she just goes and she just picks it up, and I'm like, so I don't think so, to be honest with you. I just think to a large extent, and we've spoken about this many times, men sometimes just are full of a lot of hot air, so they tend to put themselves in spaces that they generally might not deserve, but because of the air, they're able to get there. But no, I don't think so. No.
Arnold?
Do I think is it a man's world?
Shibuya just asked.
Yeah, I think
it's a man's world.
I think
Buy,
it is.
sell, or
Yeah,
hold.
I think it is I think it's a man's world.
So you buy that?
Yeah, especially after talking to Rolake here about things that I haven't thought about that will help women actually move up in whatever industry, in whatever company, whatever business. You start to realize how much of a man's world it still is. And I've worked with amazing women. I have amazing sisters, and I can see sometimes the ceiling in career progression, and I can see sometimes the struggle that they go through. So I think it's a man's world.
Well, okay.
Bye. Yeah, right. And hopefully it's not controversial, but I guess I want people to understand my perspective. You know, I've always said I don't want to be gender blind. I don't want to be colorblind, because I want to see opportunities to always make a difference. If I recognize that there is a status quo, then I'm working actively to try and disrupt it. And so I think it's important to understand where things are, right? So that we continue to rise to change it. So yes, I believe so, but women are changing the game. But if I'm raising my daughter, it's because I want her to see that these things exist in the world. And she has that consciousness of the work she needs to do to advance. So yes.
I agree. I also think it's a man's world, unfortunately, even though I think it also depends on, you know, what you're looking at, whether it's business or whether different things really. But from a general point of view, it looks like I'm buying that. And it's even more poignant now because of the kind of world we're in and the kind of leaders we have now.
Absolutely.
Globally, especially powerful leaders. Shows over and over and over again that it's a man's world. And even if you have women out there who are doing well, they still pull themselves down, right? For whatever reason. So, but a lot of progress have been made, man.
Yeah.
If you, especially if you know the history and you know where women are coming from, centuries and thousands of years ago to now, there's a whole lot of progress made. But unfortunately, still a man's world. But let's move on, Tunji, to the last buy, sell, or hold. I'm just curious to know, second half of the year. Don't worry, no tricky ones. What are you buying? What are you selling? What are you holding? The last half of the year could be anything. Just pick your brains. Economy, politics,
Buying,
whatever. What are you
selling,
buying? What are you
holding.
selling? What are you holding?
I'm buying. I mean, all the assets look good. Crypto, gold, equities.
So you're buying, investing.
Investing is. I'm leaning heavy into investing. I think this year I've done more investing this year than I've done in my entire life.
So the second half of the year, you're going to continue investing.
I'm going harder. As in, the first year has been really good.
What are you selling?
Is there anything to sell?
Habits.
I'm thinking. I don't know if there's anything to sell.
I'm surprised you're not.
Can you sell
you're
your
not doubling down,
buy?
Maga. Exactly. Can you sell that?
So that and I'll write a book on this sellish, hold, buyish, you know. Hold is still the Nigerian government as a whole. I just don't think we're doing enough. I still don't think we're doing enough. The PR is not strong. The narrative that we should be all buying into is not strong enough. The big beautiful bill, as ridiculous as it sounds, is a thing. It's being regurgitated by every media house. Do we have such a thing? No, I just think with all the great policies we have, we just don't have a central narrative that is bringing everything together to help it trickle down to the bottom of the pyramid. But yeah, that's what I'm holding.
So I'll probably speak market. So what am I buying? I like precious metals, but what I'm doing right now is for the rest of the year, I'm separating all the precious metals, right? So the three top for me: gold, silver, and platinum. So 15 or 17 years ago, I used to trade precious metal futures. Platinum was about $200 to $300 more expensive than gold. Fast forward to now, gold is about $3,000. Platinum is about $1,300, so stayed around the same. But what we started seeing at some point this year, this quarter, is we started seeing platinum. When gold hits $3,500, it hit almost like it hit a peak. And it started to look more expensive compared to so many other assets, oil, silver, platinum. So you started to then see now, you started to see silver and platinum really rally. So where gold would go up $100 in April, platinum went up $400. So what I'm doing right now is I'm slowing my buying on gold and buying other precious metals, platinum, silver, because they're looking like a leverage play on gold, right? So precious metals. So I'm buying platinum, silver. What am I selling? US market. So I sort of agree with Rolake. I think that US Treasury yields go high. We start to see the long end, the 20, 30 year stuff go high. So I'm selling US Treasuries, still selling US dollar. That's what I'm selling.
Holding.
What am I holding? Holdish buy Nigerian equities. Man. I like Nigerian markets, Nigerian equities, Nigerian bonds.
So neutral results.
No, I'm buyish, holdish buy.
Whatever.
I'm bullish.
So I'm buying anything oil related, buying into upstream.
Downstream.
Yeah, that for me, really, this is drill, baby, drill. So I'm buying so long as capital is there. Holding on crypto. I've been a crypto investor since 2011.
Wow.
Very early. Very, very early.
You know,
I invested in one of the first Bitcoin mining companies. I invested in one of the first Bitcoin mining companies. But I'm neither here nor there now. So I'm just kind of waiting to see how things pan out.
But you have made a lot of money. You must have maxed out that investment by now.
To be honest, it was a wise, even though at the time I thought the person was crazy, I'm not going to mention, but one of the major crypto mining companies back then. But I'm holding on crypto now because I'm not even sure what the trajectory is. I'm selling, I'll hold on crypto and equities, actually, most of the Nigerian equities. I'm not selling any of them because there's so much upside. What am I selling? I'm just selling pretty much most of the global north.
Really?
In the sense of, I talked about the aid thing, and I feel like because now is our time, right? We just need to face it in here. Selling it in the sense that what happens out there, yes, it matters, but look,
it's not business.
take
Like
it's going. We're seeing the resilience here.
Yeah.
So let's, look
Cut out the
inwards,
noise.
cut out the noise and focus on our focus.
You see?
All right, guys. What am I buying? What am I selling? What am I holding? I'm buying dollars. I think that probably the best time to, if you're somebody who is into that portfolio diversification.
Igojo always knows there's something going on. You know something we don't. You know something we don't.
If you're into portfolio diversification, I think probably the best time to diversify into dollar earning assets, or probably just hold
hot take.
hold
Hot take,
dollars.
hot take.
That's for me, because prices are just right about, right time to enter. What am I also buying? I think I also buy, some of the positives we see in the economy on the macro level. I know it hasn't trickled down yet, so I think that there's a lot that's going on that I kind of like. Now, what am I selling? I'm selling populism. I kind of feel like we're in a world that is very divided. I don't know whether it's politicians that are dividing us, perhaps it's them, but I just think that there's just so much populism around now, and there's so much fear. Even fear that's related to immigration. There's just a whole lot of fear. I don't know. There's even fear around. We don't even know if globalization as a word still exists anymore, if it's going to work. Because people are now afraid to invest across countries. So you're seeing everybody looking inwards. And so that's what kind of like what I'm selling. So not really sure that is as huge as it was maybe 2-3 years ago. What am I holding here? I agree with Rolake equities, and I agree with Rolake and Arnold. I think that not just Nigerian equities, US equities as well, I'm quite invested in them too. I'm not selling them. I don't believe that where a bubble will burst anytime soon. I think I said that the last couple of episodes or so. I think we're in a different world now where what we define as bubble has changed. So we got to understand that, that thing that makes things burst or makes bubbles burst. I don't think it's going to happen that way. I'm not saying bubbles won't burst, but it's not going to happen the way that we think it's always happened. So that's what I'm buying, selling and holding. It's been an amazing episode of Drinks and Mics yet again. And of course, by the way, it was Mr. Arnold's birthday. I didn't want to ask him where he went to. No, it was on Monday. I didn't want to ask him where he went to, but let's just leave that. But it was all day. So happy birthday, Arnold.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
By the way, on record, he's no more Tumba Arnold. He's now
Sir Arnold.
Yeah, so we can give him that.
Double by Rolake.
Yes.
So of course, thanks to Lead Drop, of course, and UAC for the water and for all the support. Of course, we still have our books. If you haven't read Vantage is right here. We're looking for people to give these books to. So it's just that still don't seem to have gotten anybody. And of course, we got Nigerian Corporate Stories by Nairametrics right here on the screen as well. And of course, we thank Rolake for being a part of this. Hope that we can see you again. And of course, what are we doing? Bye, Rolake. Bye.
Bye.
Before call.
Always bye.
All right.
It's this month, right? This month, the live.
Yeah, so we're working really hard on that live show. Likely going to happen this month. Very likely to happen this month.
Yeah.
And then by next week, we will be making a final announcement, venue and how people are going to attend. Until we do this again next week, do have a profitable week ahead. Peace.